Hey guys, how's it going? It's Al. We are going to talk about some week 1 wide receivers on DraftKings. NFL DFS season is almost here. We're just a couple of weeks away. If you've watched the quarterback video where I went down every single quarterback basically on the list, running back videos, I went through every single one. There's too darn many wide receivers. I'd be here all day. So I've broken this down to players that I like at different salary tiers. We're going to talk about a bunch of them. I'm going to tell you which guys I like at each salary tier, and we're going to go from there. Appreciate you guys being here. All the returning viewers, welcome back for NFL season. All you new viewers to the channel, appreciate you guys being here and welcome. If you'd be very kind to me, all I ask, click that like button, subscribe to the channel, ring the notifications bell, leave me a reply down below with maybe some receivers that you like at their salaries for week 1 on DraftKings. How are you going to win at GPP? Let's talk about it. Let's go.
He's a legend.
There's so many wide receivers. There's so many wide receivers to talk about on this video. I'm going to try and keep it somewhat condensed. I've got here the Millionaire Maker $5 entry fee. You and over 1 million of your closest friends trying to take down $1 million first prize is not going to be easy. You're going to have to put yourself in the best position, maybe by using the strategies that we talked about in the How to Win on DraftKings, attacking large field tournaments. Might be somewhat pertinent information for you to kind of look at, but you're also going to have to get extremely lucky to beat that many people. Much easier to win smaller field tournaments than large field tournaments. So let's look at the expensive wide receivers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of them above 7K. The pricing in week 1 all the time is going to be softer than in other weeks. It's just the way that the pricing goes. That's the way that things work on DraftKings. Week 1 is a capture people, get them in the tent, let them have fun making lineups. Salaries come out a month before the season starts. So it's a little bit more friendly than in other years. So you're going to have some expensive guys for good reason. DeVonta Adams scored 1 million touchdowns last year. Whole offense comes back this year. He is still extremely expensive and very likely worth it and very easy to pair based on his market share of targets, based on his end zone looks. I don't think he's going to get as many looks from inside the 1 and 2 yard line as he got last year, an absolutely inordinate amount of targets in the end zone on plays that originated from the 1 and 2 yard lines. I think that comes down, and maybe if it does, his touchdown totals come down a little bit, but a very consistently high targeted, high market share guy. Tyreek Hill can break a slate. We know that. Same with Davante Adams. These are all slate breaking guys. For a wide receiver to break a slate, you're talking about 25 plus, 35 plus points, 60 points, 30, 36 points. Tyreek Hill is who he is. We know him from his previous ventures into the end zone, but he can't do this peace sign anymore. But have you seen that he has like the glove now where it's a yellow glove and he's got it's got a thumb and the 2 fingers are blacked out, so he can just do this and it looks like he's giving the peace sign now? It got returned to him so appropriately and rudely during the Super Bowl. Calvin Ridley is an absolute monster at 7,900. We may not have adjusted for how good he can be this year, and in a potential shootout, a game that I do want to target on this first slate. Philly against Atlanta in the Dome. Lots of targets coming Calvin Ridley's way. 7,900. Sure, that's a lot to pay. One of the guys that I'm really interested in week 1, DeAndre Hopkins in this tier. You know that you're going to get a lot of targets. It's a game that does have a total over 50. You know that they're going to be coming low ADOT, let's say, right? Low average depth of target, closer to the line of scrimmage, meaning that all those targets should be easier to turn into completions. 8 of 12, 9 of 11, 9 of 11, 8 of 13. If he gets double-digit targets, he approaches double-digit catches pretty much all the time. However, he's going to have to do something after the catch to get you to that 100-yard bonus, because the average yards per catch is not great all the time consistently in this horizontal raid offense. So I would hope that this year, with the additions of other receivers around him, AJ Green, Rondale Moore, some of them field stretching guys, another year for Andy Isabella, to kind of stretch the field. Christian Kirk is still back on this team. More wide receivers in this cliffy offense usually means that they can do better things. So great floor for DeAndre Hopkins. Also a potential ceiling guy at the price of 7,800. I like him a lot. Steph Diggs, the American hero, wearing the red, white, and blue once again in a high totaled game against Pittsburgh's defense. It's another great spot for Steph Diggs to get in at 7,600. If you're paying up at wide receiver, also if you're pairing him with Josh Allen, you can capture the majority of the targets, touches, touchdowns between the two of them if Josh Allen runs it in, or if he throws one or two to Steph Diggs. The other guy was the cover boy in this range that I wanted to really get after, and AJ Brown. A little bit of his market share is going to depend on Julio Jones's health, who is a little bit banged up right now. If Julio Jones starts week 1, and I expect him to start week 1, AJ Brown is a very good play. If Julio Jones is out, AJ Brown is an enormous play at only 7,100. Those are my top 3 guys above 7K. Jefferson, he's awesome. You know, love Justin Jefferson, assuming that injury that he sustained from his shoulder earlier in camp is going to be completely healed. DK Metcalf going up against Indy, who allowed a lot of deep throws last year, clearly splitting a little bit of the target market share with Tyler Lockett, 7,500. It's a fair price for him. Obviously can break a slate, but as we saw multiple times last year, but the difference between his ceiling and his floor is vast. 27, 4, 43, 4.8, 30, 9, 26, 5. It's like he kind of yo-yos, and he's not really a consistent 10 plus target guy, which if I'm paying over 7K, I want this week, at least for week 1, I want to get that guy that I can probably bank on getting 10 plus targets with a high percentage of the end zone targets, with big play upside as well. Metcalf certainly has the big play upside, definitely has the end zone targets when they get close, especially with Russ Wilson, who loves to target his outside wide receivers, but he also gets a ton of deep targets as well. So big ceiling, a little bit lower floor than the other guys. That's why I have guys like Diggs and Hopkins and AJ Brown ahead of him. Next salary tier, sub 7K. We're going to go sub 7K down to 5K. So that's our range here, 5K to 7K. The guys that stand out to me in this range, I'll tell you when we get there. So 1, Keenan Allen, not really the guy that's standing out to me based on his salary, because it's higher than some of the other guys at this price range. So we're getting a better point per dollar aspect, but Keenan Allen is as good as any receiver on the planet. Probably more of a cheaper 7K plus guy than a value guy in this 5 to 7K, 5 to 6,900 range, just based on some of the other guys in this range. Julio Jones, we talked about him. Monitor his injury situation, as I mean, it's Julio Jones. You always have to monitor Julio Jones's injury situation. Thomas is out. Terry McLaurin at 6,400. Again, this is 500 less, and you do want to be a little bit, you know, price sensitive when you're looking for these value receivers, especially on a slate where there's so much value out there. Now, can you find the value to get up to Keenan Allen, especially if you're running some sort of Charger stack or a triple Charger stack where you're going with Herbert to Eckler to Keenan Allen? Yes, Eckler, I project to get enough targets to be paired with his quarterback and not be negatively correlated at that spot. I'm fine with that sort of a lineup build, and that is going to be somewhat popular in terms of quarterback double stacks. But Terry McLaurin at 6,400, either as a standalone or involved in a Fitzmagic stack on the other side, or if you want to use Allen as a bring back play, fine in terms of that. But Terry McLaurin is a standout value to me at 6,400. I expect his target market share to climb this year. I expect his efficiency to climb this year with better quarterback play from Fitzmagic, who has always been an elevator, at least the last 3-4 teams that he's been on, for the wide receivers that played around him. Terry McLaurin, by far the top wide receiver, outside receiver on this team. You guys know how I feel about Logan Thomas. He's going to get a lot of targets, but Terry McLaurin can certainly thrive and hopefully score more touchdowns. As you see, 4 touchdowns on 93 targets through those week 18 last year. It includes the playoff game. That's way too many targets and yards for as few touchdowns as he turned those into. So I would expect this number to rise, especially if his end zone target share and inside the 10 target share rises with it, which I expect it will. Moving down the list, we have Deontay Johnson, who is just an absolute target monster. Like him, don't really love the matchup, though they could be chasing a ton in this spot. DJ Moore, I do like in this spot. Again, everybody, we're going to have to monitor their injuries. This video is coming out on the 25th. We're like 2 weeks away from opening day. So things can change in the NFL, as you know, extremely quickly, much like this morning when, or yesterday when Travis Etienne was ruled out for the season after absolutely nothing. Before that, we had Sony Michel traded, which changes values on other players as well, like Henderson and Harris. So DJ Moore, anybody with a Q next to their name, this questionable tag, make sure that you monitor this guy all the way up to line. Al said he likes this guy, but he's probably not going to play in week 1. So, like, should I play him? No, dummy. Monitor the injury report. But assuming health, at 6,100, that's just way too cheap considering the matchup with the New York Jets. I think everybody in this this Carolina Panthers offense is going to thrive. I really do. And when you add to the fact that that defense is not going to be very good, we have a potential fantasy carnival situation setting up for DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson and CMC, and God help him, even Sam Darnold might be able to just throw the ball a ton, and he's going to turn it over, but he might turn those into touchdowns as well, a la Jameis Winston a couple of years ago, where like the defense isn't good, they're going to turn it over, create a short field, it's going to create scoring, it's going to force them to throw the ball a lot more to some very talented wide receivers who can also get open. So DJ Moore at 6,100, another value to me. Landry, I like Cleveland in this game against Kansas City, one of the higher totals on the weekend. They're not going to just be able to ground and pound. Now maybe they will, right? There's some game script scenarios that like their defensive line overpowers the Kansas City offensive line, kind of like the Buccaneers did in the Super Bowl, which allows them to get an early lead, which allows them to rely more on Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt in that running game behind that really good offensive line as well, and they don't have to throw it. But also, majority of the game scripts that are being projected for this game is that Kansas City's going to score a lot of points, and they're going to have to score a lot of points too, which means that Jarvis Landry is going to get some targets. But if we look at the prices, Jarvis Landry's $6K, and Odell Beckham Jr. is $5,400. What? Assuming that Odell is ready to go and 100% for week 1, and all signs point to yes, this price is just absurd for what he has in his locker and can bring to the table in a potential shootout game against Kansas City. One of the guys that I really like in this range. Another player that I really like in this salary range, Brandon Ayuk. 5,700. Again, way too cheap. Big time touchdown potential here against Detroit. He's going to have to get it early, though. I think that this game, if San Francisco takes hold of this game, gets a 10 to 14 point lead anytime within the third quarter, this is going to be an absolute slowdown situation. Ayuk's going to have to score a touchdown in the first half, more than likely, in order to really smash on this slate. I do like the price. I think the ceiling might be a little bit lower than some of these other players in this range, like Beckham Jr., like Moore, like McLaurin, but has a potentially higher floor with always the potential for big plays in the ceiling because of his just ability, let's just say. In terms of floor ceiling combos, Jacksonville's offense is better, and Houston's offense and defense might absolutely suck, but Brandon Cooks is the one guy who really stands out to be able to sustain 10 plus targets, just like the 7,000 plus wide receivers, with a worse quarterback situation than those guys, but is obviously 2K plus cheaper than everybody in that 7 and 8K range. 5,300 is too cheap for the amount of targets that you get. You're going to need Cooks to wander into the end zone in order to get there, but we've seen massive games from him before, and that floor based on those targets does look very good for the price. So considering that he's going to get the lion's share of the targets, and Houston should spend a lot of time behind this season, and also projectably in week 1 in this game against Jacksonville, even though they're playing at home, I like Cooks to get close, maybe 8-9 targets in this game, with the potential of getting over 10 if the game does shoot out. So the big time possibility is here for a safe mid-range value play. Couple of other plays at this range that I really like. Laviska's too cheap on the other side of that. If you wanted to secondary stack these guys, just use the receivers and bring back Chenault and Cooks. Love that for like 10.3K. Laviska's was already going to be thrust into a larger role this year than he was last year. And if you look at him down the stretch, 9 targets, 7 targets, 6 targets, 11 targets over the final month of the season. And now with Etienne gone, they're going to have to find even more ways to get him the ball creatively in this offense, which could mean a couple of more carries per game, which could mean a couple of more screen passes per game, or maybe lining up in the backfield on third down situations if they don't give James Robinson all of the touches or all of the snaps on third down, with a coach that does like to get creative with his playbook. No matter how bad we think Urban Meyer is, how much dinosaur, whatever, he's always been a creative guy with his playbook and getting the ball in the hands of his playmakers. So possibly big things coming for Laviska Shenault, especially with the target market share that we expect to be on his way. And at the low end of this range at 5K, I mean, he's too cheap. Next price range, let's just look at 4K to 5K guys. 4K to 5K guys. Curtis Samuel, monitor the injury situation. He's been injured all throughout offseason, all throughout camp. Coach said I'm pretty optimistic that he'll be able to practice sometime next week. That groin injury has really been bothering him through the entire offseason. If he's not a go, De'Ami Brown probably slides into a lot more playing time and a little bit more of a market share. But that's a situation where Terry McLaurin and Logan Thomas probably really, really thrive. Monitor that as it goes on. Corey Davis, absolute preseason monster with the first team so far this season. The Jets passing game and running game, I guess, seems like just a bunch of guys, but the rookie quarterback looks like he can deal it a little bit. And every time that he's been on the field with Corey Davis, he has basically looked Corey Davis's way. Like 70% of his routes run, he's caught a target so far, or gotten a target so far during the preseason. So Corey Davis, massive floor for a 4.9K price. If you're playing head-to-head games, great play. Great floor play here. If you're playing tournaments, people don't want to play the Jets, makes for a great secondary stack, or a bring back play for your primary stack if you're stacking Carolina. I prefer him and them as a secondary stack. I'm probably going to have a couple of Darnold stacks in week 1, Darnold double stacks in case they go absolutely bonkers and bring it back with Corey Davis or somebody else on that team. But like, ignoring what he did with Tennessee last year, where he was excellent, by the way, it's just a completely different offense. And now he's the alpha in this situation. So 7, 8, 9 targets, not out of the realm of possibility. And for 4,900, that's just too cheap. Jamar Chase took a year off, can't really catch anything so far during preseason, but the price does look low for the potential shootout situation that this game is. Minnesota-Cincinnati going to be an extremely popular stack, double stack, bring back, secondary stack. Expect the percentages to be high on them. T. Higgins in the same boat. Not getting into the Instagram story that his girlfriend posted the other day, Jamar Chase. If something comes down the pipe and there is some validity to those claims that his girlfriend made, we'll deal with that when the time comes. As for now, I'm just dealing with the fantasy outlook for it. And right now, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins with Joe Burrow does look like a very tasty stack and or double stack for week 1. Jerry Jeudy with Teddy Two Gloves, now named the starter in Denver. I think big things are on the way for Jerry Jeudy. Another guy kind of like Corey Davis in the sense that he's getting too many targets for this price point, right? This is probably going to be the cheapest that we see Jerry Jeudy for the next month or two. I assume that he's going to rise to like that 5,700, 6,300 range over time. So this is the cheapest that you're going to get to roster Jerry Jeudy. And while Teddy may not be great on deep passes, he does look underneath in Jeudy an amazing route runner who's done really well during preseason so far this year. And I'm expecting a lot of things from him in terms of an increase in his targets and also an increase in that market share of targets, and an increase in yards and catches and touchdowns along the way. Yes, Cortland Sutton is back from his ACL. Yes, Noah Fant is the big deal, but like Jerry Jeudy does profile as an alpha who can definitely handle getting a lot of targets. He is great at separation and he's going to be open. And when you're open, not any way dissimilar to Deontay Johnson, if you're open, your quarterback's going to throw you the ball. Drops are a bigger real life issue, an on-field issue, a coaching issue. Man, we didn't move the sticks, right? You got to get that ball. but like they're not going to take their guy who constantly gets separation off the field. And if they constantly get separation, they're constantly going to get targeted. If they constantly get targeted, they're going to catch them. So Jerry Jeudy, a big floor, massive ceiling receiver. Hopefully Teddy can improve his efficiency on throws that go over 20 yards in the air this year versus last. Couple of other ones in this range. Like I said, this video is going to be long because there's just too damn much to talk about. DeVonta Smith is thin, but he's not thin on value at his salary. Don't let anybody tell you differently. Some guys are just good at football, and he is an amazing route runner, high points the ball, uses his body well, plays bigger than his size. DeVonta Smith at 4,500 against Atlanta's mess of a defense has big time potential here for touchdowns, targets, and catches. And if you can get to the point where Hurts has himself a 25 to 35 attempt day, and DeVonta's getting 20 to 25% of those targets, including 20% of the market share of the red zone or end zone targets on this team, DeVonta Smith has big time upside because his talent level is off the charts and greater than any of the other receivers, pass catchers, tight ends included, on that Philadelphia Eagles team. We'll see how he does. It's a bit of a leap of faith, obviously. But I do like DeVonta Smith in this spot. The last player in this price range that I wanted to talk about, Michael Pittman Jr. I expect him to take a little bit of a leap. As you guys can tell, I'm usually high on second-year wide receivers. That's been a theme for me for as long as I've been doing content, since 2013. I expect a lot out of second-year wide receivers because that's the year that they tend to take a leap for a lot of reasons that we've talked about before. 4,100, we do have his quarterback back under center, so he's not going to be dealing with, you know, well, he could be dealing with bad quarterback play because the jury's still out on is Wentz good or is Wentz bad, but like at least the starter is there, and it's not like Jacob Eason. He's got a guy who has been an MVP candidate before with his same offense that he was running when he was that, and Pittman is the alpha guy right now in that offense because T.Y. Hilton is somewhat aging, and Pittman runs the shorter route. So really high floor here for 4K. Obviously for tournaments, you want having access to, like, you know, 4x, 5x his salary, 16 to 20 points, which he can do with the amount of volume that should theoretically be headed his way against a matchup at that Seattle secondary. Not great, right? They're not that good at stopping guys from catching the ball, and then after they catch the ball, running with the football in their hands. So great matchup here for Pittman Jr. A great price for Pittman Jr. in week one. I expect this salary to rise as the weeks and month goes along. So you can get in kind of cheap if you wanted to go with one of those Seattle wide receivers or a Russ stack and bring it back with Pittman. I absolutely love that in tournaments as well. So if you think that, you know, I'm going to pay up a little bit to be contrarian with DK Metcalf, bringing it back with Pittman on those same lineups to get yourself a little bit of correlation, and what's going to cost you 11.7 for that pair. I like that. I like that a lot. Now let's get down to the nitty gritty, the super low salaried guys, the guys that everybody's going to be looking at for value. As you can see, there's a lot of names on this list. I'm going to give you 6 of them. There's a lot. It's a lot. And this video is already going long. So thank you if you're still here. I appreciate if you're still here and you haven't clicked like and subscribe. What are you even doing with your life? Like, you're here. Just click it. But like, let's take a look at some of these guys under here. Up top, AJ Green. If you believe that in AJ Green's resurgence as it's been billed through camp, I'm fine with that. He is not on my list of guys that is super amazing in this price range, but mostly because Rondale Moore, my ambassador of Quan, number 85 on your Arizona Cardinals, says number 4. Has he changed his number? He was 85 all through preseason. If he's still number 85, he is the ambassador of Quan. That's it. That's his nickname. That's what we're going with the rest of the season. They're going to run him out there a lot in the slot in that old Larry Fitzgerald role that they were running, but he is a little bit more prepared to get after it with the ball in his hands and make big plays when given the ball in space if he catches a block in front of him. He's absolute minimum salary. 3 of 5 targets for 15 yards, rushed once for 9 yards, did not play a lot of plays. He has been playing with the first team. He has been seeing snaps with the first team offense. They have been force feeding him the ball in that slot. 3K is absolutely too cheap for a guy with the explosiveness that he showed in college and the amount of volume that should be headed his way. I'm not expecting 8, 9, 10 targets, right? But if you're going to give me like 6 targets and easily convertible targets at that, right? Like pitch and catch targets, behind the line of scrimmage targets, and he can turn those 4 or 5 catches into 50 or 60 yards. That's 10 fantasy points plus, very reasonably, for 3K that allows you to afford the guys that you want. So Rondale Moore, one of my super stud guys on this list. I'm not going to try and slide through all the different guys here. I'm just going to go right to him by name. Marquez Callaway, he was kind of an under the radar guy, being drafted from like 160 to 200 in terms of his ADP on best ball, on DraftKings, and on Underdog. But like, he showed up in a big way in that prime time game against the Jaguars, and at 3,400 with everybody else not ready to go for New Orleans. And let's assume at this point that Jameis is going to be the one. If it's Taysom Hill, we adjust. But we're going to assume at this point that Jameis is the guy. Jameis is a slinger, and he's going to just let it fly. And I like a wide receiver that has the courage to wear number 1. And Marquez Callaway is a guy who actually might be #good, is outside of Alvin Kamara the primary receiver right now. At least he's a primary outside receiver, even though Kamara may out target him. You don't need 10 plus targets from Marquez Callaway, but you could get it. You could get 7, 8, 9 targets from Marquez Callaway in week 1. What I don't believe you're going to get from Marquez Callaway in week 1 is 2, 3, or 4 targets. So we have a verifiable floor of targets for Callaway based on the injury situations that are on the outside, with Thomas out, with Traquan Smith dealing with injury throughout the preseason, and Marquez Callaway looking like the alpha right now for the New Orleans Saints. You could do worse than him. Marvin Jones, somebody who has kind of struggled when he's been the number 1 guy, but he doesn't have to be the number 1 guy. I know this is my second Jaguar that I've talked about, but I think that they're too cheap relative to, you know, matchup and current market share. So Marvin Jones Jr. at 3,600, with a lot of attention probably going to be paid on the other sides to Laviska Shenault, the slot and the other side with DJ Chark and Laviska Shenault. Marvin Jones Jr. at 3,600 kind of feels like he's a value if he was able to get like 7 or 8 targets, 6, 7, 8 targets in this spot. He's just too cheap. There's another one. This one is a little bit more of an unknown. High draft pick, but an unknown in terms of on-field play. However, we have a situation where Will Fuller, in most games of this season, when the Dolphins are a fully operational battle station with Will Fuller and Jalen Waddle and Parker and Gesicki, there's a lot of mouths to feed on an offense that probably does not want to throw it 40 times in a game. Will Fuller's out in week 1. Jalen Waddle's looked pretty good in preseason. He's only 3,600. If Jalen Waddle's able to sustain 20% of the target market share in week 1, and they throw it 30 times, if Tua throws the ball 30 times, that's 6 targets. For a guy who's an excellent route runner, able to get spacing, able to get separation, and is tremendous at getting downfield. My old podcast partner, Adam Levitan, would also say that the shower narrative is in play here, with him and Tua having gone to college together. So Jalen Waddle at 3,600 with no Will Fuller in week 1 is another guy who appears to be a massive value. I'll give you 2 more. Is there a period in this? Or is it just St. Brown? Between the brothers Equiminius and Amon-Ra, I'm going to go with Amon-Ra St. Brown at 3K against San Francisco. The matchup's not great, but the volume should be there, both in terms of snaps, in terms of routes run. He is a talented wide receiver out of USC, and the Lions kind of need talented wide receivers because it's just not a very talented roster. He's going to have to make something happen. He's a little more thin than somebody like Waddle or Marvin Jones or the other guys. The other guy is also, that I wanted to mention at least, is also a little bit more thin than those other guys at 3,400. Gabe Davis. This is a really high potential play. Again, you have to kind of monitor the situation because of his presence on the COVID list. You have to monitor Beasley's situation because of his presence on the COVID list because of close contact. So like, we'll see which wide receivers in a week and a half are available to play for the Buffalo Bills, but that's going to dictate which guys are a little bit more of a value. And it's also why at the top of the show, we really liked Steph Diggs. I appreciate you guys spending so much time with me today to go over all of these 20 plus wide receivers that we talked about on this show. Drop a like, subscribe to the channel, look out for another video right there.
He's a legend.